which was very different than the network is the computer. So we tried to do the anti in relation to what we thought was the right answer. So it wasn't always just they're the bad guys, but they're the bad guys because. And they're the bad guys not because they're bad people, but they want your job. They want to bury sun. They want to take out our way, our vision, our cause. And so, you know, I gave you the short answer there, but if you elaborate, I mean, you can't just stand up and say, hey, they're bad guys. You know, it's got to be relative to what you're trying to go do, what vision you're trying to drive. And I will tell you one of the other things that we've added to, and I wish I'd done it way earlier in our company. We put a cause together, because that's kind of the positive. The anti is the negative, and the cause. There's some people who respond to fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and enemies, and bad guys, and are just plain old aggressive people. And then there's the kinder, gentler, and nicer people who do things to be good. And so we put together a cause, and we're more. And by the way, we've always had the cause. I could have gotten out of this thing a long time ago, but I always felt we were doing something that was really valuable, creating jobs and all the rest of it. But more importantly, bringing the network computing paradigm to people who couldn't afford a mainframe or a PC, either from a time or money perspective. So our cause, we're very explicit about, and we put it in our pitches, is to eliminate the digital divide without torching the planet. And so there's an eco-responsibility focus that is part of getting the 3/4 of the world that is not connected to the IP network onto the IP network. You all can't imagine not being on the IP network. 3/4 of the world has never been on the IP network. That's a pretty staggering challenge, and it's one we've kind of grabbed. So that's kind of the positive side. It's kind of the non-hockey player side of me. So, other questions, comments, thoughts?
We have one that was offered up before earlier in the day.
From you, as a seed stage company, does it make sense to try to partner with a big company like Sun?
That's a setup.
Actually real.
Well, absolutely. And in fact, you know, it was interesting when we were losing money. IBM and HP were actually positioning us as proprietary Sun, going it alone. And we couldn't be less proprietary. I mean, there is no more open company. There's no company that does more R&D and shares more of it. I think we have 3 times more software donated than our nearest competitor to the open source community. And I don't know anybody who's open sourcing their hardware. And we're open sourcing all our good stuff. We have 20,000 channel and ISV partners worldwide. I mean, our whole strategy is to partner and to leverage and to build. I mean, Jonathan puts it the right way. He says, we're trying to build a very, very large community and then monetize it at a very reasonable rate. And you can do that if you have a very large community. So build a large community. I mean, what did YouTube do? What did Google do? They built a very large community, and then monetization becomes a lot simpler task. So the whole concept around open source is 0 barriers to entry. It's free. Download it. 0 cost of goods sold, 0 distribution cost. It's got a lower engineering cost because our partners are helping make it better. And it has a 0 barrier to exit. So if you partner with Sun, we will not lock you in. It's not a Roach Motel that you check in and never check out of. Because all of our IP is in effect in escrow on the internet for free, with 2nd, 3rd, and 4th compatible suppliers out there with our open source technology. So I think it is safe, very safe, to partner with the $2 billion worth of annual R&D that Sun does.
Great, great. Next question comes from Vic.
Where do you see Sun in 5 years from now?
You know, the future is always a little difficult to predict, but I think the consolidation has sort of started to happen. If you listen to Greg Papadopoulos, our CTO, he's been talking not too fantastically about the fact that there's going to be maybe 6 computers on Earth someday. And if you think, what is the biggest computer today? Probably the Google computer. That grid is probably the single biggest computer. And you know what? What if it all boils down to the Yahoo grid, the Google grid, the MSN grid, the AT&T grid, and the Deutsche Telekom grid, or whatever? You can see kind of where we see the market going and where the world is evolving to on the big high-end infrastructure space. We want to be the primary arms supplier to those grids. And so we're building microprocessors like the UltraSpark T1, and we're building open source Solaris 10 with things like ZFS and D-Trace and other technologies that will allow those big grid players to grab subscribers, keep them, and raise their ARPU, their average revenue per user, as they go out and compete against the other major grids. You're spending way more time using major grids than you do your PC anymore. I mean, your CPU doesn't really do a lot of stuff other than manage the browser for you, or process some video streams. And that doesn't take a lot of processing power anymore. The big computing is happening out over the network.
Okay, now probably the toughest question of the night. Who's going to win the Stanley Cup this year?
Sharks on the power play.
Perfect. Scott's got a busy night. He's going to try to stay around as long as possible. We're going to move to the presentations, and hopefully he'll be able to stand around and
Thank you. Appreciate all your support.
Big hand for Scott.